Welcome to Drive the Daf. Clear, structured explanation of the daily Daf in 20 minutes. You can even follow in the car.
Yoma Daf Vav discusses the halachas of setting aside the Kohen HaGadol, isolating him before Yom Kippur for 7 days in order that he not become tamei and be disqualified from doing the avodah on Yom Kippur. The Gemara will discuss some of the details of the halacha, why we took those steps and why we weren't concerned for other steps. Along the way we'll have two sugyas. One, when does a bo'al nida, somebody becomes tamei because he was together with a nida, when can he go to the mikvah? Is it like a nida or like other types of tumah? And when we say that you can bring a carbon bitumah, does that mean that it's perfectly fine or that it's to be avoided as much as you can? So let's begin. The Gemara says we have seen the halacha. You take a Kohen HaGadol, you set him apart in the Lishkas Parhedrin, in the Beis HaMikdash, in the part of the Azara, for 7 days before Yom Kippur, so he doesn't become tamei. So Gemara says, why can't his wife join with him? He said he has to be alone. Other people are allowed to be walking in and out, but his wife is not allowed to be there. Now I understand that he'll become a Balkari if he's together with her, but that could be remedied in 1 day. He'll go to the mikvah, when the sun goes down, he's tahar. Why can't she be with him? There's no tumah of 7 days, even if he's together with her. The Gemara, Rashi explains it's not really in the Azara, this Lishkash Pahedrin, and therefore they would be allowed to be together. So the Gemara explains that we're afraid maybe she'll be a Safek Nida. When he's together with her, then he becomes a Safek Boel Nida. The halacha is that somebody who's together with a Nida has Tumah for 7 days, just like a Nida. The Gemara says, what, you think he's a Rasha? That he's together with his wife and she's a Safek Nida? The Gemara says, no. What I mean to say is that she'll discover blood after they were together, and then we don't know if the blood was there at the time that they were together. He's now a Safek having been together with a Nida. He's Safek Boel Nida. He'll have to have Tumah for 7 days, then he'll be disqualified. Therefore, we have to keep them away from each other for 7 days before Yom Kippur. So Gemara says, it seems to be going like Rabbi Akiva. Who's Rabbi Akiva? There's a machlokes. When a woman finds blood, how far back do you have to assume that blood was there? So as far as taharis, we say that the halacha is you go back 24 hours. There's a number of opinions of Tanaim, but you assume that the last 24 hours, any truma that she touched became tamei. The question is, if she was together with her husband within the last 24 hours, does he also have to assume that the blood was there and he is tamei? So there are a number of different time zones as to how quickly after they were together she finds it, as to what halacha is. Rabbi Akiva says that even if you find it relatively quickly, you still have to assume that he is tamei, and therefore our Gemara here seems to be assuming, like Rabbi Akiva, that if she'll discover blood, he will have to assume that he is tamei, at least misafek, and will be disqualified from doing the avodah on Yom Kippur. So not necessarily. It could be that the Chachamim agree as well. The Chachamim only argued on Rabbi Akiva in a time that is not immediately after they were together, but shortly after they were together, within a couple of minutes after they were together. After that, there's no machlokes. Everybody agrees that there's no suffix, but there is an earlier time in which the Chachamim do agree that you have to assume that he is tamei, and therefore he'll have the tumah for 7 days, and he will not be able to do the avodah. And is that of that concern that we don't want them to be together with each other, and he has to be isolated from her. So now the Gemara says, how exactly does this tumah work? How does isolating him for 7 days going to solve the problem? When you isolate him, it's for 7 complete days, right? Now maybe he became tamei just before the 7 days began. That's when he became a boel nida. That means he'll be tamei for all 7 days. Now, the halacha is that a nida doesn't go to the mikvah until the night after the 7 days. So if he also doesn't go to the mikvah until the night after the 7 days, he doesn't actually become tahar until the following day when the sun goes down. You only become tahar when you go to the mikvah and the sun goes down after that. So if he can't go to the mikvah until after 7 full days of tumah, just like a nida, and then he goes to the mikvah at night after the 7 days, then Yom Kippur is the next day. You will only become tahar when the sun sets on Yom Kippur. He'll miss the whole avodah. Obviously, it must be that he's going to go to the mikvah early. He's going to go to the mikvah on the 7th day before sunset. And it's not like a nida. It's different than a nida. He's allowed to go to the mikvah unlike a nida even on the 7th day itself. And then when the sun sets, his tumah is off and he's over. He's tamei until the end of the day, but he's allowed to go to the mikvah early. So now this is actually a topic of a machlokes, whether a boel nida is allowed to go to the mikvah like most people who are tamei can go to the mikvah during the day, and when the sun sets, his tumah is over. Or is it like a nida that she can only go to the mikvah after the day is over, and therefore the tumah only comes off the next day? So Gemara says there's not necessarily proof to that. It could just be that we separate him about an hour before Shkia. It's a 7 days plus an hour. That being the case, we know that his first day of tumah is the day previous to the 7 days. If he became tamei, it was tamei in the day previous. That's his day 1. And therefore, the 6th day that he's isolated will be day 7. He could go to the mikveh that day, and he could go to the mikveh that night. And then the next following day is the 7th day of his isolation, is Erev Yom Kippur. When the sun comes down on Yom Kippur, he becomes tahar, and then he can step forward and do the avodah. Now the Gemara wants to bring some more proofs about the topic of when does a boel nida go to the mikveh. Is it on the 7th day or after the 7th day? So the Gemara brings a brisa that says all people who have to go to the mikveh, they go during the day, except for a nida and a yoledes who go at night. That is, a nida and a woman who gave birth, they go at night. So Gemara says, you see that a boel nida is not included in this list, so he can go during the day. Gemara says, no. When we say nida, we mean anybody who has tumas nida. When a boel, somebody who's a boel nida, who's together with a nida, that tumas nida goes on him, and therefore he's included in the term nida in this brisa. Okay, Gemara's next proof. We have a brisa that says that a balkari is just like somebody who touches a sheret. Somebody who has a seminal emission has the same halacha as somebody who touches a sheret, same tumah for 1 day, go to the mikvah, when the sun comes down, they are tar. A boel nida has the same tumah as a mace. Somebody who has tamei mace, somebody who's together with a nida has tumah just like somebody who touches the dead. He is tumah for 7 days. So Gemara says, well, what are you telling me is tumah for 7 days? I know it's a clear psukim that tell me that a boel nida, and there are clear Mishnahs at least to tell me that a boel nida and a tamei mace have tumah for 7 days. You don't need to tell me that. You must be telling me that the halacha of tefillah are the same. Just like a tamei mace can go to the mikveh during the day on his 7th day, a boel nida could also go to the mikveh during the day on the 7th day. Gemara says, no, not necessarily. The chiddush here could be the end of that Mishnah. You're right. Telling me that they have tumah for 7 days is not a chiddush. The chiddush is that although they both have tumah for 7 days, there's a difference. And the difference is that the boel nida is matame anything he lies upon. Anything he sits or lies down on, even many layers, all the layers become tameh. But they don't become tameh like other people who are matame things that they lie upon. A nida and a zav are matame anything that they lie upon tumah chamura. That's tumah that could even be matame people or kalim devices. That are tumas kli rishon, but boel nida, he himself is considered like a rishon, and therefore he's not matame kalim and people. He's only matame food and drink that could become tamei tumas sheni, and therefore this is how it's different than tumas mace. This halacha of mishkav and moshav of anything that he sits or lies upon does not apply with tumas mace, and therefore that is the chiddush of this brisa, that although they're both a tumah for 7 days, they have different halachas as far as things that they sit or lie upon, even without touching those things many layers further down. Now the Gemara brings one more brisa which is conclusive. Brisa of Reb Chia that says a zav a mitzora, and a mitzoras, a male or female mitzora, a boel nida, and a tamei mace. All of these have their tefillah during the day. It says clearly, explicitly, a nida and a woman who gives birth, they are the only ones that have their tefillah at night. That is a clear conclusion as far as this discussion. Okay, next. The Gemara had said that we set him aside from his wife for 7 days so he doesn't get tumas nida. Now the question though is, what about tumas mace? How can we allow other people to walk in and out of the room? Maybe somebody will drop dead while they're there, and then he'll become tamei mace, and now he can't do the avodah. So why aren't you concerned for that? So Gemara says this must be because even if that happens, we're not going to be worried. Why not? We know that a korban tzibor, any avodah b'tzibor, is allowed to be done when there's tumas mace. Now, the machlokes. Machlokes is, do we say that that's hutra? That's perfectly fine. It's absolutely mutter. There is no preference to use a tahar person over a tamei person. And if it's a korban tzibor, it's totally mutter. Or is it not so good? We allow it, but it's duchui, we push it off. We allow it, but of course it's far from a perfect optimal situation. So this must mean that it's absolutely fine. Because if it wasn't absolutely fine, we would keep other people out of there to avoid the concern that he may become tamei tumas mace. Obviously, it's proving that it's perfectly fine. Even if he becomes tamei mace, we don't care. It's perfectly fine. He's tamei mace, but it's avodah b'tzibor, and everything's fine. So Gemara says, not necessarily is this a proof. It could just be that it's not shchiach. It is uncommon for a person to drop dead, that the woman will see blood and the person she was with will become a boel nida. That happens. That a guy just drops dead is highly uncommon, and therefore we don't have to go so far as to ban anybody from being in the same room as him. Okay, now the Gemara goes deeper in this machlokes as to whether Tumah is Hutra or Dechuya, Tumah B'tzibor is Hutra or Dechuya. Do we say it's perfectly fine or it's not perfectly fine? And the Gemara phrases it in terms of which Kohanim should do the Avodah. If you have a group of Kohanim, some are Tamei and some are not, who should do the Avodah? So the Gemara brings two versions of this. According to one version, the shita that says that Tumah is Hotra is perfectly fine is even if within the same family that are serving today's shift, you have some kind of Tameim, some kind of Tahorim. The Tameim could do it just as well as the Tahorim could do it. It's perfectly fine. That's the opinion of Hutra. And the other one argues and says, no, that's it's Dechuya. You can't. You should have the people who are Tahorim do it. Why should you have the Tameim do it if you could have Tahorim do it? That's one version of the machlokes. Going to the other version, no. Within the family, you have people standing there. Some kind of a tahor. Some are Tamei. You should certainly let the Tahorim do it. There's no skin off your back to have the Tahor people do it. Even if you're old Tumah Hutra, that it's perfectly fine, you're still going to say that the Tahor person should do it if he's standing right there. The machlokes says you have to go get somebody from a different family, somebody from this shift of Kohanim that are serving this week, but not serving today, not from this family. You have to go get somebody from a different family. That's the question. Do we say that you really don't want it's Dechuya, you really don't want the Tumah? You don't want a Tamei Kohen to do it, so if the only Tahar people you could find are from a different family, you still have to go and fetch them. Or do we say, no, it's fine, it's not such a big deal, and if everybody in this family is Tamei and the only Tahar people are in a different family, then you don't have to go.
Drive the Daf is a project of the Grand Woodlands Shul and is presented by Rabbi Yitzchak Landa. Find us on YouTube or subscribe to daily emails by emailing drivethedaf@gmail.com.